In this lesson, we'll take a look at another technique for rigging the cables that will prevent them from separating from the engines and cab. Now I've left the bones and the spline IK goal in the scene so you can learn how to remove this type of setup. To do so, we want to go ahead and select the root bone of the chain and press Control page down. That will grab the rest of the child bones. From there we can go ahead and delete. Now you'll see that the spline IK goal is still left behind. It's snapped to the origin of the scene. So you'll want to go ahead and head over there, select the goal, and delete that as well. Alright, so now that's cleared up. Now as far as the right side, we're actually going to go ahead and leave this chain just for now. The reason why is we're going to go ahead and create envelope objects. Envelope objects are used to deform other objects. Now, with the envelope object, we'll want to find a way to just go ahead and orient it to the cable. And being that this bone chain is already oriented to the cable, we can use its position and orientation to match our envelope object up with. So it's going to be a lot easier for us to do it this way. So with that said, under the Create panel, Shapes, let's go ahead and create a rectangle. And we can go ahead and draw this out to cover about 3 grid squares. And then right click to end the rectangle tool. Alright, now instead of working with Quick Align, we'll go ahead and work with the Align tool, which gives us more control as to what axis we like to align in. Alright, so with the rectangle selected, we can head over to Tools, Align, and choose the Align tool right at the top. Alright, so from here we want to choose the object we'd like to align to. It's going to be this root bone. And notice, again, we have control over what axis we like to align in. So if we just wanted to align in the Y and Z position, we can go ahead and uncheck the X, which is great. Notice the same thing goes for orientation. Alright, but we'll probably want to go ahead and check all of those on to get this perfectly matched with our bone. And then even at the bottom, we could see that we can match in the scale axes as well. So that's great. But I'm going to go ahead and hit OK once we've made sure that we're matching in orientation and position. Okay. Alright, so from here what we'd want to do is clone this object to the lower part of the engine. We're basically creating anchor points for our cable. Alright, to keep it locked down on the engine and the cab. Alright, so with that said, we want to go ahead and, with our Move tool active, choose Local instead of Parent for our coordinate axis. This is so that we can go ahead and clone this object down the cable a lot easier. Alright, so with the envelope object selected, I'll go ahead and hold down Shift and just drag this down. Choose OK. I'll press Z to zoom in. And what we want to do from here is just take the pivot of this rectangle and match it to the endpoint of our cable's curve. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. You can kind of just eye that in place. Alright, now that that's done, let's go ahead and recolor these to stay consistent. Again, on the right side, we're using green, left, blue. Alright, so selecting both, we'll head over to our object color palette and use a different shade of green. Okay, so from here we'll want to go ahead and rename these. Being that these are going to be envelope objects, the first we'll name ENV underscore R underscore upper cable 01. I'll go ahead and copy this name. Going to the next anchor point, we'll go ahead and paste, and that's going to be lower cable. Great. So from here we can go ahead and mirror these over to the left side. Now watch this. If we were to select both and try to mirror them, their shape will not mirror. Okay, the reason why is because we need to go ahead and reset the X-form on these. So I'll go ahead and cancel this out, head over to the Utilities tab, and go ahead and reset the X-form. And then the last step again is to go to Collapse, and Collapse selected with the first choice selected under the output type. Okay, so now with both still selected, we can go ahead and mirror these over. And what I'll do is just adjust the offset slightly so it's easier to select these objects and mirror them across. All right, so this is not the value we're going to use for these envelope objects. We'll just go ahead and just put a value in there, so again we can move them across a lot easier. All right, so now what we want to do is select the original envelope objects and get their X position. Now under local mode, notice we don't quite know that X position. All right, so what we want to go ahead and do is actually switch this to, let's say, parent. And now by doing so, we have the value we need to mirror the other object across. Now if you don't see that object, if it's still set to 0, you may need to just go ahead and kind of shift this object in place and then press undo, Control Z. Alright, so from here I'm going to go ahead and copy this value of 6.241, select the opposite object, paste the value in, and put in the reciprocal, which in this case would be negative 6.241. Alright, now it's mirrored over. We can go ahead and do the same for the lower cable envelope object. I'll go ahead and copy its value, select the next envelope object, go ahead and paste that in, and put in the reciprocal, negative 40. Alright, let's go ahead and select both of these objects and recolor them. Okay, so we'll use a shade of blue, being that they've now been mirrored to the left side. What we want to do from here is go ahead and rename them. So that's going to be ENVL upper cable 01. Do the same for the lower cable. Switch that R to an L. And the 002 to just 01. Okay, the next step is going to be to link them so that they will stay connected, stay anchored to our engine and to the cab. So in this case, we don't want to link to the engine control, but to its secondary control that has all of that automated motion connected to it. So I'll go ahead and choose the link tool and link right to that helper. Alright, we could do the same for the right side, link to that helper. And then as far as the upper envelope objects, we can go ahead and select them both and link right to the cab control. Alright. Let's say we go ahead and take the bone chain on that right side and delete it. Again, select the root bone, press Control page down, and delete. We also don't need these curves any longer. Let's go ahead and select both of them and delete them. The reason why is because these cables, they're actually NURBS curves. So there's no point of binding or skinning one curve to another. Alright, it'll make it a lot easier for us to go ahead and just envelope these objects to this curve without working with a secondary envelope control. Alright, with that said, we're now ready to go ahead and skin to these cables. So let's say we head over to Tools, we'll go to our Layer Manager, and I'm going to go ahead and unfreeze the Pod Racer Mesh. And by the way, if we were to go ahead and press F3 to view the shaded mode, and then go ahead and freeze this, notice how the cables are actually going to gray themselves out. The reason why is because what we'd want to do is select each cable, right click, head over to Object Properties, and make sure Frozen in Gray is turned off. So sometimes we need to do that for our object. So I'll go ahead and do the same for the right cable, Object Properties, and uncheck Frozen in Gray. Now when we go ahead and freeze this, we can still see the cable texture. Okay, great. So unfreezing that, I'm going to go ahead and start with this left side. You can go ahead and select the cable, head over to the Modify panel, go to the modifier list, press the S key a few times so we can get to the skin modifier. Okay, so from here what we'd want to do is go ahead and choose Add underneath the Parameters rollout, and go ahead and add our envelope objects. So that's going to be the upper left cable and the lower left cable. Now notice this, because of the naming convention that we're using, we can find those objects very quickly by just simply typing in the find parameter env_L. Notice that isolates them, so we can go ahead and select them, and now they've been added to the skin. So watch this. If we were to go ahead and take our engine control and start to move that, now our cable will deform. Great. Let's go ahead and do the same for the right side. Select it, head over to the modifier list, press S a few times to get to the skin modifier. From there, we'll go ahead and choose Add. We'll go to the top and type in ENV_R to get to the envelope objects we need for that right side and choose Select. It's as simple as that. Now, if we were to go ahead and select that engine control and start to move that, we're deforming the cable. Great. And also notice this. We can go ahead and drag this for as long as we like, and that cable will not separate at all. Great. So now what I'd like to check from here is just making sure that the cable is still inserted within the grooves of the engine and also the cab. I'll go ahead and select the cab control, press the Z key to zoom in. Okay, that looks good. We can go ahead and check the left side. If they're ever out of position, feel free to go ahead and select the envelope object. So here's a perfect example right here on the left side. Feel free to go ahead and select this envelope object and just move it into place. Much better. And again, it's going to stay anchored. We can go ahead and select this engine and start to move that around. After the envelope object has been linked, I'm going to make sure that that is linked to the helper. Okay, great. So now we can go ahead and take that engine control and start to drag that, and notice it's going to stay anchored. Now you see we're getting some weird deformations in our cable. Alright, they're not as flexible as we'd like them to be. So let's say we go ahead and move on to the next lesson and fix the deformations we're getting in the cable.